Hey everyone, it's Intel here. So in this video, I'm gonna be revisiting my Glorious GMMK Pro. If you guys aren't aware, I actually switched from using my GMMK Pro to a Razor Huntsman Tournament Edition because of a number of problems that I had with the GMMK Pro. So in this video, I'm gonna be completely revising my Glorious GMMK Pro build to make it sound better, feel better, and reduce the input lag on it because the input lag was a huge problem that caused me to stop using it. But anyways, I don't wanna waste any more of your guys' time, so let's go ahead and get right into the video. Before we get into the video, I'd like to take a brief moment to talk about today's sponsor, World of Tanks. World of Tanks is a free-to-play, action-packed combat game with over 100 million players worldwide. If you like PvP, then you need to give this game a shot. The combat is fantastic. Take control of one of over 550 historically inspired tanks, artillery, and even tank destroyers to completely decimate your enemy. You can play the game by yourself or with your friends to become the ultimate tank commander. With the ability to modify and upgrade your tank as well as more than 40 unique maps to choose from, World of Tanks will have you hooked as soon as you start playing. Right now, you can use the code TANKMANIA to get 3 free premium tanks, 250,000 credits, and 7 days of premium access. So don't wait, download World of Tanks today and join me on the battlefield. And thank you so much, World of Tanks, for sponsoring this video. I'm going to be performing 6 different mods to my GMMK Pro in this video. I'm going to replace the default gaskets on the GMMK Pro with the KDB Fans D65 gaskets. I'm going to tape mod the PCB, add a thin layer of polyethylene foam on top of the PCB, replace my Panda switches with the lubed Glorious Lynx switches, swap out my keycap set with GMK Mizu PBT keycaps, and flash the GMK firmware on the keyboard to fix the GMMK Pro's input lag problem. Let's start by opening up the keyboard. We need to remove all the keycaps and the switches from the keyboard first. The GMMK Pro provides a switch puller and a keycap puller inside the box, so the process is pretty simple. Next, we need to remove the 8 screws on the back of the keyboard. Doing this allows us to remove the front panel of the keyboard and have full access to the PCB and backplate. After we've done this, we're going to start off with our first mod, which is replacing the gaskets on the GMMK Pro with higher quality gaskets. In this video, I'm going to be using the KDB Fans D65 gaskets. The gaskets on the GMMK Pro is probably one of its weakest points. The gaskets are super thin and barely provide any cushion at all. Overall, they're pretty terrible quality, so we're going to remove them. I peeled them off from the keyboard and used rubbing alcohol to remove any additional residue that was left behind. And then I cut the D65 gaskets to shape and stuck them where the previous gaskets were. You can see that in comparison, the D65 gaskets are much thicker and they're also much more cushiony and retain their shape much better than the ones on the GMMK Pro. Swapping out the gaskets alone should make a pretty noticeable difference to the sound of the GMMK Pro and make the keyboard feel a little more cushioned when typing on it, as well as making the sound less harsh. But we're not stopping there. The next thing we're going to do is tape mod the PCB, which is basically applying a layer of masking tape on the back of the PCB. For whatever reason, this tends to make keyboards sound a lot better. I honestly don't know how or why it works, but take my word for it, tape modding the PCB is going to help the sound. Make sure the masking tape doesn't cover up any of the screw holes on the PCB or the port where the PCB connects to the daughter board. Next, I'm going to remove the polycarbonate backplate by removing all the screws that connects it to the PCB, and then we're going to place a thin layer of polyethylene foam on top of the PCB. Polyethylene foam is a super common material. You can find it included with the GMMK Pro. It's what the keyboard is wrapped in the box, and all you want to do is cut a piece off so it's the same size as the PCB, and make sure you also make cutouts for the stabilizers as well. Once that's done, we're going to replace the plate foam on top of the PE foam, and then sandwich it all together with a polycarbonate backplate. What you should have is the backplate, which is on top of the plate foam, which is on top of the PE foam, which is on top of the PCB. The PE foam in combination with the tape mod should make the keyboard sound a lot more thocky. Okay, so it's now finally time to reassemble the keyboard, which is as simple as plugging in the PCB into the daughter board and screwing everything back together. In my previous keyboard video, I said that I didn't like the feel of Glorious Panda switches and that heavy tactile switches weren't really my thing and I don't really enjoy them for gaming. So in this build, we're going to be using lubed Glorious Lynx switches instead. The Glorious Lynx switches are exactly my preference in switches. They're lightweight linear switches, and I also really like the aesthetic of the switches. As you're going to see in just a second, they fit perfectly with the keycaps that I'm going to be using. Finally, onto the keycaps. In this build, I'm going to be using the GMK Mizu keycaps. They're not actually the Mizu keycaps, they're a knockoff that I got off of Banggood for around $70, but to me, they're pretty much indistinguishable and the quality is pretty much the same. Previously, I used the GMK 8008 keycaps, and while they looked really good, I had one big problem with them, and it was the fact that they were made out of ABS. And because of that, the keycaps ended up shining super quickly. The WASD cluster feels much different from the rest of the switches. ABS keycaps honestly feel awful, and I wouldn't recommend them to anyone who actually plays any PC gaming. These knockoff GMK Mizu keycaps in comparison are made out of PBT, and they feel much higher quality than the ABS GMK 8008 keycaps. Before we're finished with this keyboard, there's one more thing we have to fix, and that is the input lag problem. The GMMK Pro has a really bad input lag problem, which makes it pretty much impossible to use for any sort of rhythm game, and it's also really inconvenient for speed bridging, which is why I switched to the Razer Huntsman Tournament Edition. To fix this problem, you need to uninstall Glorious Core, and you need to flash the keyboard with the GMMK firmware. There's a video that I followed that made the instructions really simple, and I'll put that video down in the description below. But after flashing the GMMK firmware, the keyboard was rid of any input lag problems, and it became so much better to use for gaming. Seriously, the difference is night and day between using Glorious Core and the GMMK firmware. But anyways, here is the finished build, my new GMMK Pro, and I absolutely love this keyboard. This is my perfect keyboard. It feels great, it's super premium, and it has a delicious sound. Speaking of sound, let's go ahead and get right into the sound test. The rest of this video is going to be me playing Bedwars and Skywars with my new GMMK Pro build. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, it really does mean the world to me, and with that being said, enjoy the rest of the video.